Hello and welcome to the Land and Climate podcast. My name is Bertie Harrison-Broninsky, and today I'm talking to Tor Tuorda, a photographer and activist from Lapland in northern Sweden. Tor is part of the Indigenous Saami community, and for several decades he has been campaigning against the development of an open-pit iron mine near his home in the locality of Jokkmokk. A British company called Beowulf Mining has held the exploration license since 2006, but the proposed mine, known as Kallak, has been subject to legal battles and criticism from Saami and environmental activists. In 2022, Greta Thunberg criticised the Swedish government's decision to grant the exploitation concession for the Kallak mine as racist and colonial, saying that, quote, Sweden pretends to be a leader for the environment and human rights, but at home they violate indigenous rights and continue waging a war on nature. The world will remember this, end quote. In June 2024, Sweden's Supreme Administrative Court upheld that 2022 decision, and the company is now seeking an environmental permit. Kallak is part of a larger wave of new mining projects in Sweden, which was publicly criticised 2 weeks ago by the Saami Council, whose president said, quote, "The EU is promoting the exploitation of minerals that contribute to human rights abuses within the EU. This is a direct violation of our rights as the only recognised indigenous people within the EU." End quote. In light of this, I was interested to hear about Tor's objections to Kallak and to hear his perspective on the larger issues at play.
The water had risen and covered 2 caves where the Saami, my ancestors, used to offer to the gods. But the power is still there in this mountain, Activism. But now the mine is coming in the same region.
I began by asking Tor to tell us a little bit about himself and to introduce his work campaigning against the Kallak mine.
I live 40 kilometers west from Jokkmokk, beyond the Arctic Circle in Norrbotten County, Sweden. I work as a photographer and also an activist. I struggled against a mining company almost in 20 years. It started 2006, and that was the Beowulf Mining that came to the mountains north of Kvikkjokk, just beside this Sarek National Park, inside the Laponian World Heritage. And they got permission from the Swedish government to extract, to drill, to test this titanium ore mine. It's also a lot of iron ore. And there my struggle was starting against this madness, and I was completely alone. No one cares back then. But now we have a lot of people that are critics. We have a Facebook group, a network. We have almost 8,000 members. And then we did a collection of names against this mining project in Jokkmokk municipality. And we have almost 80,000 names on it. So from zero to this direction, it's straight up, sky high. This is only one thing in a much larger perspective that is called colonialism. It's extraction of everything. And the Swedish government made a lot of laws that make the Saami people fewer, because the Saamis was in the way for the extraction, the hydroelectric plants, the mining, the clear cuts, the farming. So therefore, they make a law that reduce the Saami. And we have this Racial Biological Institute of Sweden, the state formed, and the Nazi back in 1922, 1930, and this law 1928. A lot of Saamis was afraid. They don't want to talk Saami. They don't want to wear Saami clothing. They become Swedes. That's culture genocide.
So today, perhaps you could say a little bit about Saami life in Jokkmokk and the surrounding region. in contemporary times and how that is threatened by this same industry?
Yeah, this mining company, we have a village that's called Björkholmen, about 3 kilometers from this mining spot, this open pit mine. And this village was formed by Saamis a couple of 100 years ago. But all that Sami people, all that inhabitants in that village will be forced away by force because of this mining adventure. And the Sami, the reindeer herders, they can't move, they can't pass this spot on the migrations from the summerland to the winter pasture. You can't hunt anything there. It's only this open pit mine, this great pond of poison. Kallak mine is near a really sacred place for the Saamis back in the time. But 1968, Vattenfall, as the greatest Swedish hydroelectric company, dammed this river, this Little Lule River, Bertie, how it's called. The water had risen and covered 2 caves where the Sami, my ancestors, used to offer to the gods. But the power is still there in this mountain, Acek. But now the mine is coming in the same region.
You said a little bit about kind of the threats to this Sami village and Sami ways of life in terms of hunting and so forth, but I know that there are environmental concerns as well. And you've said a little bit about kind of poisonous aspects from the pollution. Could you talk a little bit more about that as well?
Yes, we have this Little Lule River that flow down to Vollerim and down to Luleå. And in Vollerim, it met the Great Lule River. And then the huge Lule River flows from that village, Vollerim, to Luleå, to Boden municipality. Both of these cities are taking their drinking water directly from the river. It's about 100,000 inhabitants in that 2 villages, that 2 cities. And you have this sludge pond with a lot of heavy metals and poison. The risks are really big that the dam to this mining dam will collapse and leak poison to the drinking water and will poison the fish and everything in the water.
I know that you've attended lots of protests and had interactions with different stakeholders about this. What kind of reception have you had from companies, governments, authorities? Have you had any interesting dialogues over the kind of 20 years? Have you seen certain positive responses from anyone?
This is not in equal terms, these dialogues. In Swedish, you call it samverkan, same, equal something, like a democratic thing. But no. This is only an information thing. They inform what they do and then they do it. They don't think about us, what we say. Nothing.
Yes, the other half to that question as well would be, have you had any negative personal impacts from doing this work?
They threatened to kill me, a couple of people. They drive slowly behind this house where I live and look in with the dark. It's really scary. They hang a doll in the little tower in the village here in Randiaur. A doll that looked like the activist of the mine. And hang it by the neck. But it's much better now. The people have woke up a little bit more than back in 2012 and 13. Then I think this had been a beautiful thing. It was like a sect, religious sect. But now it's much better.
It is such a long time that this has been developing since 2006. Why has it been such a long time? And there must have been successive Swedish governments that have approved this now. And I know that there was a court ruling last year that upheld a previous government's decision. You've said that money is kind of the motivation for this. Are there any other reasons that the Swedish government is so committed to this project? And why has it taken so long to happen?
I think it's a lot of prestige in this question. They also talk about this green transition, this green, beautiful society that will come. But this is iron ore. We have a lot of iron ore mines in Sweden, in north of Sweden. We don't need this. It's half as rich as the Kiruna iron ore deposit. We have no transportation roads, no rails, nothing.
You said a little bit at the beginning about the kind of longer history of Swedish colonialism of the Saami people and of that region. How does mining as an industry fit into that longer historical narrative? I mean, has mining always been a part of this story, or is that a more recent development?
Yes, it is. It started back in 1661 here in this municipality, Jokkmokk. With the mine, they want to extract silver from the ledge, from the ore in the mountains, about 50 kilometers west from Kvikkjokk. Nowadays, this is Padjelanta National Park. Sweden was in war. They need money to buy soldiers from Europe. They need to pay them, mercenaries. And then they blow up this mountain in the holy part of the holy mountains of the Saami. In 40 years, they forced Saami and the reindeers to transport this iron ore down to Kvikkjokk, 50 kilometers. Then in 1674, they find another deposit of this ledge, this silver. And nowadays, this is Sarek National Park. And they transport the ore down to Kvikkjokk and melt it in the place in Kvikkjokk. In 40 years, they got about 360 kilos of silver and about 20 tons of ledge. It was really a disaster. That was the beginning of the colonialism in this part of Sápmi.
Has that been a fairly consistent narrative since then? That's a fairly long time ago. And has the mining industry been a key part of this kind of process of assimilation, forced assimilation that you talked about? Or?
Yes, it was forced assimilation. It was forced movement of people. But the worst thing when we talk about poisoning, that is these two mines in Padjelanta and Sarek National Parks, which nowadays also are inside this Laponia World Heritage. They are constantly leak heavy metals to the water. It's open. They don't do anything, the Swedish government, to reduce this flowing of heavy metals to the water.
To what extent is Kallak similar to other cases in Sweden? I know that just in the past few weeks, the Saami Council has criticised the implementation of the EU's Critical Raw Materials Act, and in particular around the mining projects that Sweden is kind of pushing through that. I think there's 47 projects that have been criticised as part of that. So do you think Kallak is one of many similar stories happening in Sweden in terms of this kind of environmental and anti-colonial pushback? Or?
Yes, it's an example of what we can do, what people can do. We serve as an example of the resistance. This is the only thing the mining companies have. They were really shocked about this back in 2013. So the Kallak is a kind of example of what to do, what we can do, what other protest movements can do in Sweden. You can see it right now. They want to blow up a lot of rare materials in Oviken, Östersund, down in Jämtland. It's about 700 kilometers south from here. They managed to have a demonstration last weekend. 3,000 persons in Östersund. Great moment. And we had also in Kiruna, Vittangi, graphite. I don't know what it's called in English. To this green transition, you need that metal in batteries.
Graphite.
Graphite, okay. So it's a lot of bubbling. It has not been a really sharp situation yet, but it will come here in Kallak. We will be the first one, I think.
How big an issue is this in, say, the Swedish press or Swedish national politics? Is there kind of contention and concerns around any of these mining projects reaching that larger national audience or becoming a kind of talking point with politicians?
Not yet. The only place people talk about is this Kallak. It was like Alta-konflikten, Alta in Norway. The hydroelectric plant in 1970s, 1980s. It was really great impact to the government. The Norwegian government took part of the Saami in another way after that. Implemented this ILO 169. Sweden has started not do that. And they talked to the Saami and make some excuse for the past. Not in Sweden. It's only silent. Sweden is like a kind of monster, big, huge parasite, and don't leave anything to us. Don't leave anything to the future generations. They do it right now, only for themselves.
What do you think needs to happen, perhaps at EU level, to put in some protections around impacts on communities such as the Saami?
Yeah, but we have this Raw Mineral Act in one hand and this protection of the indigenous in the other, in some way. I don't know. It's schizophrenic, I think. I don't know exactly what we have for assistance from the EU.
Did you get the sense that there was a bigger push for these projects, say, after the invasion of Ukraine or any other things in the past few years? I know that, again, we've got this new surge of interest in European defence at the moment since Trump. Have you kind of observed any of those things feeding down into what's happening at local level?
I think so, yeah. It's a great question, but it's not so clear. But I think there are more push for these questions and this material in the grounds, like in the World War II, when Kiruna support Germany. 80% of the iron ore they needed to the tanks and artillery. And it's the same thing here. Sweden will supply the whole union of metals, mostly north part of Sweden, where I live.
What's next then for your activism on this subject? I understand that the Kallak mine has kind of been through all of its legal hurdles in terms of getting permission to run the mine and exploit the area, apart from perhaps the environmental permit, which is expected this year. Is that correct?
I don't know exactly. No one knows. They only only talk a lot of beautiful words, but I talk about that this project will give Jokkmokk municipality 1,000 million crowns during this. Sometimes they say 14 years, sometimes 25. And they want to make a pipeline to the railroad. It's about 30 kilometers east from here. They call it slurry. The iron ore will crush and make some. They push it during this in this pipeline. They don't show anything. They only want to extract, convert nature to money.
I talked to Tor further about the death threats he mentioned in our interview, and he clarified that he does know who is responsible and understands that they are locals but not employees of Beowulf Mining. I also gave Beowulf Mining's CEO, Ed Bowie, opportunity to respond to the topics we discussed in this interview. He replied over email, and in the interest of fairness, I'll read a lot of this response now. So, to quote, Ed Bowie said that Beowulf Mining and our subsidiary Jokkmokk Iron Mines AB are committed to developing a positive engagement with all Saami communities. The public consultation process, a key element of the environmental permit application, was initiated to enable all relevant stakeholders, including the Saami, to provide their feedback and opinions on the development plan for the project. And a continuous dialogue was established with local communities to inform and collect critical input, particularly from the affected Saami villages. The engagement in this consultation process has been very constructive for the company, which is completing a reindeer herding analysis to further investigate the specific impacts on reindeer herding. The company is committed to maintaining an open dialogue with the Saami throughout the life cycle of the project. He continued, saying that the company respects and values local history and culture and has completed a cultural heritage assessment as part of its ongoing environmental studies, and any potential impacts will be addressed in the environmental permit application and the reindeer herding impact assessment, and through ongoing dialogue with local stakeholders. Moreover, relevant work is ongoing to ensure that impacts from planned operations adhere to Swedish requirements and international best practices. The Kallak project is being developed by a highly competent technical and environmental team aiming to predict and mitigate adverse environmental impacts, and Sweden has robust environmental legislation. Waste management, including the embankment of the planned tailings storage facility, is designed with best practice in mind to achieve safe operations and aims to fulfill or exceed both Swedish and international requirements. As a result of the ongoing discussions between the company, local stakeholders and the Saami people, the project envelope and location of the facilities are being adjusted to minimize impacts on reindeer migration routes and on nearby villages. In relation to the threatening behaviour that Tor mentioned, Bowie said that Beowulf Mining completely condones this type of behaviour and stands for inclusive and respectful dialogue and collaboration between all parties. There is no place for threats and bullying in this process. We encourage all parties to act respectfully and to be courageous in bringing any negative experiences forward so that we can deal with them together. That's all from us for this week, but we'll put further links about the project in the podcast blurb, so if you do want to read more, have a look at that. My thanks to Tor for coming on the show and to Vasko Kostovski for our audio engineering. As always, please do subscribe and leave a review on whatever podcast platform you prefer, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Until then, thanks for listening.